Well, good evening, and as I've been doing lately, sadly to say, giving you reports about anti-Catholicism each week. And last week, the week before, was horrendous with a very, very objectionable report of a psychologist at the Institute for Living. And I'm protesting to various organizations that that kind of writing was utterly, utterly contrary to confidentiality. This week, we've been back the Times, and I'm sorry to say, the Wall Street Journal, big article about a scandal in Germany 19 years ago. And it said it was all cleaned up, and there was one school attached to Benedict and Abbey. Why in the world is there four-line column on this? This is a continuing, very, very vicious attack on the Catholic Church in the media. And I would wish you and encourage you, when you receive this type of thing in your newspaper, write them a letter and protesting. I have to borrow the New York Times now to find out their latest attacks on the Catholic Church, because I won't spend any money on the New York Times. But I was very disappointed to see the Wall Street Journal following along. They complained about the Times, and then here we are giving this article from 20 years ago from Germany. I'm going to be getting soon to have to try to use the internet, because I don't even know what an internet looks like. Now, this evening we have two very outstanding visitors representing the Catholic Educational Institute, and both of them very distinguished visitors tonight. Father John Piderit, the Jesuit father, and formerly the president of Loyola University in Chicago, is the founder and director of the Catholic Education Institute, which you will hear about, and the director of research for the Institute is Dr. Melanie Morey. So we are very delighted to have both of these esteemed visit us this evening. And we're going to look at a big, big culture question, Catholic culture. It's an extremely important part of our lives. And if we have our good Protestant and Jewish friends listening tonight, listen in, because if the Catholics could get their act together better and have their Catholic culture doing better, it would be a benefit to the Protestants and the Jews and the Muslims as well. So, Father and Dr. Morey, get us started on it.
Well, maybe Dr. Morey should start off on it, because one of the things that we do is we speak about a very successful culture in the past that worked for over 100 years in the United States. We think it was the most successful Catholic culture. And Dr. Morey started her research in this area, so maybe she should say something about that.
When I was doing my doctoral research at Harvard, I decided that the one group that I really wanted to do some research on was religious congregations of women and the colleges that they founded. And in the course of, I mean, that began what has been 20 years of serious work and filled with lots of rich and rewarding stories and great information. But one of the things that I think is very important about the sisters is that they were able to transmit Catholic culture brilliantly. Not only in our research, but lots of sociologists will say that religious women were absolutely masters of the ability to transmit Catholic culture. And they did it without having, in many cases, graduate degrees in theology. These were women who went to work early after they entered religious life. They had to be able to hit the ground running in various institutions. And they did so, and they did so brilliantly. And there were 4 things that they focused on as strategies. One, and probably the one that's the most important, is that they always had a series of practices that people could be involved in, practices that reminded them of what they believed, who they were, what this community was about. And all the practices had around them strong narratives that explained what was going on and the connection.
What do you mean by narrative now, Doctor?
The story.
The
Why
story.
do you do what you do? You know, what is it that you understand as you do what you do? They also had clear norms. This is what needs to happen. And, you know, nuns, I think, have been caricatured in a very unfortunate way as always stern disciplinarians that were negative norm enforcers. There was a certain amount of negative norm enforcement, certainly, but they were also wonderful at their ability to create a striving for the ideal. They were able to explain what doing this well really looked like, and they had lots of processes and rewards and activities that moved people toward the ideal and not just away from what was, in a sense, taboo. And the last thing was that there were real benefits that were explained to all of us that would accrue to us if we actually did these things and did them on a regular basis. So practices that were associated with strong narratives, clear norms, and real-world benefits.
And as you look back, I do 12 years of Catholic education with sisters. I went to grammar school and high school to sisters, and I am most grateful for that part of my life. And as a boy, in one town where I lived was the mother house of the Dominican sisters. And I worked in the house. I was an employee, so to speak. And working in the mother house, doing chores and things, I saw wonderful, excellent religious life. And I sometimes was in the sacristy hearing the 80 sisters chanting the divine office. And when we went to Catholic school, grammar school and high school, you did it, you know, that was it. It was a...
Father Benedict, one of the things is that we're not, I mean, we think they did an outstanding job of developing a culture. We understand that for the next 20 or 30 years, certainly the number of sisters has been diminished, like brothers and priests. And in fact, it's I think it's the biggest challenge that the Catholic Church has faced, how to adjust to this large diminution in the number of people who were involved in that way. Lots of lay people have stepped forward, but one of the reasons that we have the Catholic Education Institute is because all the training that went into in seminaries, in mother houses, all of that was for people who then would be teaching at the university or high school level or active in parishes. And we don't do that training anymore for lay people. And there are many lay people at the university and high school level who would be inclined to show their commitment to the Catholic faith, but they need more knowledge and training, and that's what we try and do.
Well, tell us about how to do that.
Well, I thought maybe first I would give one example, just so you know that what we're talking about are these practices, and many people would be familiar with this. You know, probably at the parish level, the practice that was most effective was parish priests, brothers, sisters, would tell people, look, as far as Mass on Sunday is concerned, you either come to Mass on Sunday or you go to hell. You know, and it was a fairly straightforward decision. There was a little narrative. The norm was there, Mass on Sunday. The narrative was there's this other world of banishment from God, which is called hell, and that's where you will be. So it was an easy choice for people. You know, well, I mean, why hell? You just come to Mass on Sunday. That was an easy one. Of course, we can't, that no longer works as a narrative. But also, we're really not consistently saying the norm. If you want to be a Catholic, you have to come to Mass every Sunday and on holy days. You can't just choose. And if we always say at the parish level, the biggest challenge is that we don't have people coming to Mass. Here in the Archdiocese of New York, it's about 19% when you do the head count of registered people go to Mass regularly on Sunday. So that's the biggest challenge, and we need a whole series of practices that will help it along. That's at the parish level. There are different things at the college and high school level.
Well, the college and high school level is certainly very important too. You take a so-called Catholic college. How many people are going to Mass? Now, I was at Stanford University, and they had the Dominicans. Several of them were the campus ministry, and they had a small Catholic chapel built by Mrs. Luce, but it was nowhere near the size. So they had the permission of Stanford University Protestant chapel filled, and this is several years ago, in the evening, Sunday evening, with 1,400 students. And that was very well done. But unfortunately, sad to say, you might go to some Catholic colleges and you would see very, very few people showing up for Sunday Mass. And that's a serious judgment against Catholic higher education.
Well, our experience is certainly when we meet on campuses with administrators and faculty and students, there is a concern about that. And I think that campus ministry and the presidents are trying very hard to find ways to engage the students much more fully and robustly in terms of the tradition and getting them back involved in going to Mass on a regular basis. But it is a difficult process, and many of the students come to the colleges and they haven't been practicing the faith before they show up. And so the colleges, you know, things have changed. It used to be students came, 85% of them went to Mass with their families every week. That practice continued. We're living in a very different world. And so when the colleges encounter the students for the first time, it's not just carrying on their tradition of going to Mass. It's trying to reignite in them, or to ignite for the very first time, this understanding that that's part of Catholic culture.
And also, Father Benedict, I would say campus ministry is very important. The university cannot be Catholic unless there's Catholic content at the core of the university. At the core are academics. And also student affairs, because that's formation. But if there is not Catholic content, and not just theology, at the core operations of the university involving academics and student affairs, it's very difficult to say that you have a Catholic operation there that's distinguishably different from other non-sectarian or private institutions.
And they advertise, when they're trying to get people to come, that it is a Catholic college, or it's in the Jesuit tradition, or and that's not true. It's not true. I see that sign up in the Jesuit tradition. I know what is in the Jesuit tradition, St. Ignatius Loyola, and he went to Mass every day. So there's a certain amount of baloney going on.
All right, well, we can get back to the baloney factor, but one of the things, it is true that these colleges and universities have had to make two enormous adjustments. One is Catholic students started going to elite, non-sectarian universities. So the stream of bright Catholic students who were always going to Catholic colleges, that stopped in the 60s, and these colleges had to scurry around and start attracting others. And then, of course, the completely unexpected development was the bottom falling out with priests, nuns, and brothers. So those are two very big adjustments, and we're confident that they're still in the process of making these things, and at least some of them very much want to be genuinely Catholic.
Yes. We're going to be back in 2 minutes, and this is an extremely important subject for all our listeners. 2 minutes. Now, I want to mention our program next week, also based on culture and Catholic culture, but Catholic elementary education, the Catholic grammar school. Most of the people in this room went to Catholic grammar school. And unfortunately, schools are closing, giving up, because they're not supported. So we have two very fine speakers next week. Bishop Frank Caggiano, so Auxiliary Bishop of Brooklyn and in charge of education in the diocese, and Brother Edward Shields, a brother who is a teacher and a brother of the Christian schools, brothers of the Christian schools. So that will be our topic next week. So now, where do we go with Catholic education in the parish and in the school? What are we going to do?
Well, one of the things we have been doing, I want to say a little something about Substantially Catholic, but then I'll let Melanie speak about one of the people that we use very, he's just a wonderful faculty member that we have addressed both college faculty and high school faculty. But we have a seminar called Substantially Catholic. And it's a bit of a pun, but we want to put the emphasis on its substance. There's substance in it. And we say we have a disciplinary approach. So we don't think it's really possible to have a good Catholic university and have it rely just on theology. I mean, at one time it relied primarily on philosophy, but now philosophy doesn't have as much Catholic stuff in it for a variety of reasons. So we always say it's got to be in the discipline. Most students spend most time in their majors. So we try and offer programs that teach faculty how to make connections between their own academic discipline, economics, political science, English literature, and religious themes and theology. And we have a wonderful person with whom we work.
His name is Professor Robert Kiley, and he's one of the senior faculty at Harvard in the English department. And we came across him. He has a tremendous personal commitment to the faith. He's a Benedictine oblate. He belongs to the Society of San Egidio. And he's spent a long time working with his students. And for years at Harvard, there was a required course in the Bible as literature. They asked him to take it over. And
for all English majors.
For all English majors. You couldn't graduate as an English major from Harvard unless you took the Bible as literature. And there were about 25 students a year who would take this class. And so they asked Bob if he would take over the course. And he said, well, I will do it on two conditions. One, that I can do it every other year, and two, that it's optional. So they said, okay, because they really wanted him to teach the course. And he started teaching the course, and now every other year he has 400 students in his class. He also teaches a course on the rhetoric of belief, on writings of Christian authors. And in our course, one of the things he focuses on is Francis of Assisi, to whom he has a great devotion. And also he looks at the little flowers of St. Francis. And he helps the faculty understand that this is a great intellectual tradition that has much to contribute to the education of all young men and women of the collegiate age group. And, you know, there's a lot of competition out there for Catholic colleges and universities. There are lots and lots of Catholic students at public institutions, private institutions that are not Catholic. And many of them have Catholic studies departments now, and many of their faculty are beginning to engage the Catholic intellectual tradition. So all the more reason that it's important for Catholic colleges and universities and for their faculty not only to understand that tradition themselves, but to become more comfortable and more accomplished at presenting it in the class for their students.
The bitter truth, because I've been 45 years in the teaching in the seminary, and I took my way, the long way to get a doctorate in psychology. 11 years, it's 5.5 years full time, so it's half time. And I went to Columbia. I had a very positive experience at Columbia. I was treated respectfully, faculty members, students, particularly faculty members. And there was a respect for Catholicism, and there was questions. And eventually, I even ended up being the spiritual director of a couple of faculty members. Unfortunately, my experience at some Catholic higher education institutions have not had that kind of experience. And I found a hostility and anti-clericalism that you would find there. Isn't that very strange?
It is strange, but I think, Father Benedict, one of the things that has happened is, at least among some of the colleges and universities, both the smaller ones and the larger ones, they understand what the problem is now. And they know that they need faculty members who are expert in their field, but also have a specialty in Catholic things. And we're doing another book on the Catholic intellectual tradition, also with Oxford. And, you know, we've gone across the country looking for different people. And there are some excellent universities that don't always have the best reputations, but they have some excellent people who, what we call them CICs, committed, informed Catholics. So they're informed in their subject matter at the university. Villanova has some outstanding ones. I mean, for all the problems that Notre Dame has, they have an unbelievable number of CICs who are really expert in their field. I'm not denying that there are other challenges there, but I'm saying that there are more and more of these institutions like Fordham that are hiring these people because they know they have to have the academic content linked to the Catholic component so that the students graduate understanding that, but also getting some personal witness by some of the faculty members about how to integrate this into their lives.
Well, now I'm, by my friends know that I'm a pessimist. I'm from Jersey City. I mean, an absolute pessimist, no, but a moderate pessimist. However, as I'm preparing to depart from this world, I'm optimistic about the coming back to life of Catholic culture. And I am given a great deal of hope by older teenagers and young adults under the age of 35. And I find more and more interest, fascination, practice, returning to practice, who never had real Catholic faith. And it's a very, very interesting thing. In France, you know, they had wars against the church for years. Only about 10% of the Catholics, or so-called Catholics, in France go to Mass every Sunday. But they're an intelligent, intensely believing group of people, and they make plenty of noise for only 10% of the population. And I think we've got about 20%. Let's see what we could do with it.
And as you probably know, there are students now at some of these, you might say, questionable institutions about their Catholic commitment. They're fine institutions otherwise. But, and we now know that many of them have started, the students themselves have started, these adoration groups. So once a week, they meet for adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. They've organized on their own. Sometimes they get helped out by campus ministry on it. And they do this, and it's not just one group. It can be several groups at a college or a university. Those are very positive developments, and those can expand. And that is a good, wonderful sign of the Spirit moving among these younger people.
And there's lots of different portals through which people can come to a greater depth and profound understanding of their faith. And for some people it is by experiencing adoration or other devotions. For other people, it is out of service that they come to understand their call in faith. And for many students, we think that a real engaging intellectual experience in their own discipline that brings them into touch with a 2,000-year conversation in the church around major topics of import to them will be a way that they begin, that the fire gets lit. And there was a recent Marist Knights of Columbus poll that said amongst millennials, 80% of millennials want to know more about their faith. They understand they don't know very much at all.
What is a millennial?
18 to 29.
Oh, I see, okay.
So amongst that age group, there's a wonderful opportunity to begin to re-engage and to capture their hearts and minds and spirits for the sake of the kingdom.
We also know that, and we were surprised by this, we've run these, what we call substantial Catholic seminars for university faculty. We were approached by a high school out in California, Marin Catholic, and they said they wanted to host a substantially Catholic seminar for high school teachers in Catholic high schools in the Bay Area and across the country. Anyone can come to this. And so we're doing pretty much the same thing that we would do at the university level. And these are essential questions for young people to be able to, if they're taking science, biology, chemistry, physics, miracles, and being a good scientist and a good Catholic. And we have people to address those. We also address the Christian literature. All of these things used to be done. And we're just in the process of transition. It's been a difficult transition, but we're still making progress, I think, on that.
Well, our audience, I'm sure, would like to know more about the Catholic Education Institute. And we have an email. We better get that email. Would you say what
You mean the website?
The website.
Yes, it's www.catholicexcellence.org.
CatholicExcellence.org. And people would be finding ways that they could be getting in touch with you, colleges, and as you mentioned, even possibly high schools across the country.
And as parishes as well. We have things on parishes in there as well.
Yes, you have written on a refined book here, Renewing Parish Culture. Mm-hmm. And your major book here, Catholic Higher Education, a Cultural in Crisis, is a very, very substantial piece of research, and I found it extremely fascinating. I was kind of depressed. My friends, the 35 very intense Catholic colleges, where's everybody else? Well, there was another 35 that were kind of almost getting there, I was going around telling them, clean up your act and maybe we could let you in with the Cardinal Newman Society. But maybe it's much bigger than that.
Father Benedict, one very quick thing for just to explain how, one of the things that we do is we say you don't need the whole university. It would be great if the whole university or college were clearly Catholic. But you can appeal to different groups and have a process towards deeper Catholicism. For example, one of the things that we say is any college or university could establish a Catholic Scholars Program. And that would mean that they have to take a certain number of courses, even though that's not their major, in theology, something in philosophy, something in their major with a connection to the Catholic tradition. Maybe take an exam, maybe not take an exam, but if they fulfilled whatever the requirements were that were set by the college or university, then on graduation, they would be called a Catholic scholar, and it would appear on their diploma. Many children would do that. Many students would do that, and even if they weren't inclined to do it, their parent would say to them, I'm not spending $40,000 a year on you unless you become a Catholic scholar. Are you going to promise to me that you're going to become a Catholic scholar? I'm just saying there are ways to do this, and we're still in process.
Well, I'm very hopeful and optimistic, which is interesting.
Against your nature. Against your nature.
Yes.
We hope you've been a good influence.
Our audience now, I want you to get to your television, or to your telephone, and be calling up. Give us some ideas, and for our studio audience as well. Not just questions, but say what you think and ask our speakers to respond to that. So we'll be with you in 2 minutes. Now we have a call from Joan. Joan, where are you from, and what are you going to tell us?
Well, good evening, Father Groeschel, and good evening to your wonderful guests. This evening, I am from upstate New York, and my comment or question is, in today's world, it's very difficult to live in the Catholic culture, which I think is a beautiful culture, and I would love to live more in it. We have 15 minutes a week that we have confession in my parish here in town, and that's a large parish, but there's only one priest. And also, holy days of obligation, I'm sure there are other people in my situation. There are certain days of the week that I have to work 12-hour shifts, and sometimes if they fall on those holy days, I can't go, and I always feel really badly about that. But I was wondering, can you make it up on another day if you can't go on the actual day? Is that something that is doable or not? And I'm going to hang up and wait for your comments on this. Thank you so much.
Father, please, get the Jesuits on the spot.
All right. Well, first of all, if you can't attend Mass on the holy day, that is not a mortal sin. You have a commitment. You have to make an honest attempt to attend Mass. And it is true that usually in the city you can attend, because no matter what your schedule is, there's usually a Mass the night before or in the evening. However, if you're in the country, that can be difficult. So I just want to emphasize that in the traditional sense, it would not be sinful. It's great to make it up on another day. That is a wonderful, that would be a cultural practice to make it up on the other day. But the obligation is to attend on the day itself. If you cannot fulfill that in a reasonable way, then you're absolved from the obligation. However, going to Mass another day of that week is a great way of going.
There's an interesting story. There is a very fascinating, simple peasant lady in this country known as Mama Gili. And Mama Gili, her husband was very anti-clerical, and he would not allow her to go to church for years. And Mama Gili died doing the best she could, and finally the husband went, so she went to Mass all the time. And she's up for beatification. Something of a mystic. The lady who couldn't get to Mass. Mm-hmm. Some of you may have heard of Mama Gili. I'll get a few calls tonight about Mama Gili. Julie, where are you from and what are you going to tell us?
Hi, Father Groeschel. I first would like to say it's a blessing to watch you every Sunday. You are a miracle from God. I know what you've been through, and you are a testament to what God does give to us. And I would like to just say that because of all of this anti-Catholicism going on out in this world, in this country. It has brought me closer to my faith, closer to my God, and especially this newest outrage against our Pope. And it's brought me closer to God. It's brought me closer to my faith, my religion, and I do everything I can to spread the word about how wonderful that the Catholic religion is and what it does, not only personally for me, but for everyone out there who is willing to try our religion, because it is the religion that will bring us to eternal life. And I truly believe that with all of my heart and all of my soul.
Well, Julie, thank you so much for your beautiful witness, and particularly for the defense of our Holy Father. It's appalling to see the attacks on the Pope, and in some of the big newspapers, they'll have headlines, you know, Pope involved in scandal. And then you read the whole thing. There's nothing to it. What in the world are they doing, the manipulation of newspapers and of headlines? But I encourage you to write to your newspaper, if you have to borrow it, like I borrow the New York Times. And by the way, they're going quickly into madness. You know, the pagans used to say, those whom the gods will destroy, they first make mad. And the New York Times on Easter Sunday had a cover picture on the magazine section about gay rabbits. Ooh, ooh, you know, oh. And it's supposed to be a scientific article. My goodness gracious. They really got over the edge. We have a call from Edward. Ed, where are you from? What you going to tell us?
I'm from Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, God bless you.
I'm calling. I was impressed with the comment about the committed, informed Catholics. I think we have a lot of people at the church who are committed, but that are, because of things that have happened, either misinformed or less informed or confused. And we don't have those traditional brothers and sisters who have been teaching people over the last 20 or 30 years. And one of the things I think is important now is example, because so much can be learned by example. Specifically, I was thinking about the waning belief in the real presence of the Eucharist, and how the example of the Holy Father in distributing communion to people who are kneeling and on the tongue creates an underscoring of that principle. And it would be a great example, a way of teaching, emphasizing the real presence, if we could simply institute that in all of our churches at our masses, instead of the casual, free-for-all way that communion seems to be distributed now.
Well, Ed, let me join in with you. The Holy Father gave us the orders that we're supposed to be prepared to receive communion in the hand. I thought it was an awful idea. I thought it was an absolutely dumb thing to do. And part of my reason is I've studied religious psychology much of my life. But you have to go along. But I would be delighted that the Pope would rescind that. And as a matter of fact, I'm running a betting parlor to raise enough money to talk the Pope, what we call
changing his policy.
Yeah, bribe him to get the. I'm kidding.
Father Benedict, just to the what Ed said, we have used examples. Ed, a very good comment. We say that in Catholic places, high schools and colleges, the belief has to be integrated, and they have to help form these young people. If a CIC, if a committed informed Catholic faculty member, said in front of the class one day, you know, I was over at my parish church the other day, and they had adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. And I was there, and my mind wandered, and I started thinking about X, which may have been something that he was teaching in the class, or she teaching in the class. That's a fabulous comment. Whatever X is irrelevant. Not irrelevant, but the important thing is, I was at my church at adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. I, the chemistry teacher, I, the teacher of English literature, the sociologist, I take my religion seriously. I don't have the answers to all the questions, but I pray to Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. That's fabulous witness. In our modern society, that's gold.
And there are many, many faculty and staff members at Catholic colleges and universities, all 232 of them, who are deeply and profoundly committed to their faith. They're very quiet about it. You know, we have, as a society, become more and more private about our religious practice. Sometimes I think it's because people want to be hospitable to those who aren't Catholic. You know, it's not out of ill intention or a lack of personal commitment to the faith. But I think, you know, we have to see, we have to listen and be clear about the signs of our times. And the signs of our times right now, we don't have a culture in which there is a lot of support for religious faith, belief, and culture. So it's going to take a different approach, one that's less private. People have to be more willing to go out there and to be a witness. And I think encouraging people to do that is one of the ways that you absolutely help to deepen Catholic culture in various institutions.
And we should mention that one element in Catholic life in this country has brought a lot of Catholicism into the home, and that's EWTN.
Yes.
Years ago, more than 25 years ago, I met this tough nun. This tough nun who called me on the phone. I didn't know who she was. And she was running a little radio broadcast down in Birmingham, Alabama. And just think of the immense amount of truth and faith that has been communicated through the world, not just to Catholics, but many other Christians who watch EWTN, and a number of Jewish people told me that they watch EWTN because there's nothing worthwhile on television except that. So this is this dear little old lady. Now she may be watching this tonight, so keep Mother in your prayers. We have a call from Pat. Pat, where are you from? What you going to tell us?
Well, Father, I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, by way of Marquette University and Jersey City, New Jersey.
Oh.
There you go.
And here's to the good Jesuits. I got the good Jesuits. I didn't listen to Dan McGuire. I listened to Father Naus. And I listened to Father Peter Marchetti. And I listened to Father Joseph Boyle. And those were my good Jesuits. My comment is that in 2000, Father Spitzer from Gonzaga wrote a beautiful book called Healing the Culture. And it talks about the commitment to recognizing the life issues, the dignity associated with life, a clear understanding of what personhood is about beyond the politics of it. It's a wonderful book. It's a guidepost for all of us, not just Jesuit educated or Catholic or Christian, but for everyone. And if we had more people like the good Jesuits that have guided me, the world would be a better place.
That's a beautiful conversation, I think.
Yeah, that is wonderful. And I agree completely with you. One of the things I did want to say, and clearly that happened for you at Marquette, people who are public about their faith help many different people, as you were saying, Father Benedict. You probably know, aside from some very great examples of St. Thomas Aquinas College and Steuben Franciscan in Steubenville, one of the places that generated the most vocations in the United States over a long period of time of about 15 years was Texas A&M. They had a Catholic chaplain down there who was a fabulous, I mean, he really spoke out, but he always said they were greatly helped being in Texas because the Baptists were so strong. So the fact that the Baptists spoke out helped the Catholics be better Catholics. And Catholics speaking out can help Catholics be better Catholics, but also others to be more faithful to their own religion. It's the nature of a culture, that, especially one that tends to be too privatized, that if there are some who do speak out, some may be turned off, but most are encouraged by that.
Well, one of the things that the friars of our community and the sisters, we wear our habit all the time. And we mean that as a witness of faith. And I don't know how much it is in other parts of the world, but in New York City, it's very easily accepted. Absolutely. The New Yorkers, they're quite at home. Now, we got called Barbara. Barbara, you came to our rescue. We didn't have anybody. What's your question and where are you from?
I'm from Oneonta, New York,
yes,
Father
sure,
Groeschel.
sure.
I watch your program every week, and I highly respect your views. I pray for you, for your health, and my rosary every day. My question is directed to Father John. My friend, who graduated from Notre Dame in the 50s, said he was required to attend daily Mass every day, and he still does to this day. Why can't Catholic universities have the same requirements? I'll hang up and listen for your answer. Thank you.
Well, you probably know that, Barbara, that most Catholic colleges and universities had that requirement. Yes. For example, Fordham had it as well. And there were two things that happened. Partly was the narrative was not sustainable anymore, but you could, I mean, there'd be a legitimate complaint that maybe they should have, the Jesuits or others should have been stronger on it. But then the second big thing that happened was what I referred to earlier. In my day, all the Catholic students from high school would go to Catholic colleges and universities. Once many of them were admitted and they could get their transcripts going to non-Catholic places, the Catholic colleges and universities had to scurry to attract enough students so they could keep their doors open. And so they did admit a fair number of non-Catholics. And this was the period right at the same time that they were doing that, the mid-60s, late 60s, the bottom fell out of vocations. So they no longer had the convincing presence in the residence halls to make a project like that work. That type of project, Barbara, though, I still believe can work, but as an optional thing, so you opt to be in this type of residence hall, and part of the residence hall is that you go to Mass every day, or you go to Mass 3 times a week, or whatever it is. But we're trying to get back into that cultural setting. Making it mandatory in our society tends to turn off too many people, I would say. However, making it as an option and a viable one can be an excellent way of strengthening the Catholic identity of a college or university.
Also, there is the whole business of rather than requiring and making people do it, which can create some resentment, if we had a more powerful and loving invitation to participate and start small and be willing to create a community in which, over time, more and more people understand that this is a great gift rather than a burden that they have to do under pain of whatever. So I think that there was the sense that if you're going to Mass just because you have to, that there's something really lost in that. But if we could convince people by, changing their hearts, minds, and spirits to really understand what a great gift this was and how profound it would be in their lives to develop their relationship with Christ and the Church through Eucharist, that would be a much better approach. Now, I think obviously we've lost a lot. We've gone from 83% Catholics participating in Mass on Sunday to 18, 19, 17 in some places. So that there's a lot of work, and obviously we have not been very persuasive. So we have to work on that. We have to find, as Father John was saying before, better narratives, more convincing witness ourselves of doing something that so captures the heart and minds of people that they come and they join you, and you invite them to be with you.
There is another thing here, too, that's painfully to say. I've been teaching in a seminary 45 years and a number of other places because I teach pastoral counseling, which is not a full-time program. At one point, I was teaching in 3 different places at the same week. And when you're an adjunct teacher, you're very expendable. You don't have much. Now, at Fordham, I was running lectures once a week, public lectures, getting several hundred people with such speakers as Brother Roger of Taizé and Mother Teresa years ago. My classes were filled and people were enthusiastic. I got fired because I was too orthodox. And that didn't just happen there. I had 3 different seminaries. I got bounced. I got back to 2 of them, and the other one went under the waves. Stick around. Now, that was in the 70s and 80s. It's very interesting. If I was in better shape, I could teach a lot more because there's nobody else around to teach. If you look at the Catholic library, school library, of the popular religious books that were published in the 70s and 80s, they're gone. Mm-hmm. They're gone. Nobody reads it. A book called Human Sexuality, published by the American Catholic Theological Association. It was ridiculous. The Holy See withdrew the imprimatur of this book. And the principal author happily left and got married, and he was a priest. I would have sent flowers had I been able. But that was the crazy times we lived in. They're over. And this is the time to start rebuilding. What Cardinal Newman said, the second spring. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of taking care of my health because I'd like to see a little more. Father and Doctor, thank you so very much for our audience. I'm sure they're very pleased. May Almighty God bless each one of us in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. And as always, I have to ask you to pass the box to keep us going. EWTN doesn't advertise dog food and things like that. So we rely on you to support us, not for me, but for the program, for the network. And so please send some money, a little money in, or a bit more for EWTN. Keep us on the radio. God bless.